I'm Alex Burley. I am a strategic customer success manager at Twilio Sendgrid, and I work with some of our largest customers throughout the entire customer lifecycle to ensure that they receive maximum value as well as satisfaction from our services and solutions. I am honored to moderate this panel today and to be on stage with two incredible co-founders. I know we're all very excited and eager to learn about how Nextdoor and IFT harness the power of Twilio Sendgrid's email API. So Prakash, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, your responsibilities, and your business.
Sure. Hi everybody. My name's Prakash. Thank you guys for hanging in. It's 5:35, first day of the conference. I know there are drinks waiting afterwards, so thank you guys for hanging with us. I'm the co-founder and CTO at Nextdoor, where I have responsibility for all of engineering. Nextdoor is a platform that empowers neighbors to build stronger local communities everywhere. And so for those who don't know, we have apps and a website that allow verified residents of a neighborhood community to connect with others in their community in a world where we're losing touch with those who live in the communities around us, and we've kind of retreated to almost an exclusively digital relationship with our friends and family around the world, and even people that we share interests with. We had a hypothesis that maybe we could bring people together online and build more social capital offline as a consequence of that. So every day, millions of members around the world. We're launched now, I think, in 11 countries, and about 90% of neighborhoods in the United States. Millions of people are using our platform for everyday things like talking about local events or trying to sell a used couch, to reuniting with a lost pet, and then even more important things like banding together during times of natural disasters like hurricanes or floods. And email is a big part of our story in terms of keeping people connected and informed about what's going on in their local communities.
Cool.
Thank you. Lyndon?
Yeah, so my name is Lyndon Tibbetts. I'm a co-founder and now the chief design officer, a company called IFT. We pronounce it IFT. Y'all might say IFTTT, tomato, tomato. It's all good. What that, at least historically, has stood for is if this then that. And if you've heard anything about our service, you've probably heard about the if this then that part. What we help people do is get everything to work, what we think better when it works together. And that really starts with what we're really known for is this idea of connecting disparate services, whether it's your doorbell and your Slack account or your Fitbit and your Strava account, together through these conditional things called applets. So if something happens, if your doorbell's rung at your office, then post a message in your Slack channel. And so you can really think of millions of different ways and combinations that those things might kind of work together, or that simple conditional statement might bring about this really emergent behavior, and that's exactly what's happened. We have over 18 million users, over 650 unique services across home IoT or personal finance or fitness, and we now have over 350 enterprise customers. The way our business now works is the brands that you see on the platform are the customers, and our pitch to them is for any brand that's not Apple, Amazon, and Google, is really, really difficult to build a developer ecosystem of any kind. And what we help them do is build integrations across all the services that go well beyond just if this then that, and help them present those integrations in their own applications, not dissimilar from like a PayPal, but for integrations that their own customers take advantage of.
Great, thank you. And Prakash, you've already alluded to it, but email is such an important communication channel. So can you tell us, how your company uses email and some of the goals that you set to achieve?
Yeah, like a lot of consumer applications, we use email for very basic things like confirming registrations and making sure that you can change your password if you've forgotten it. But also, it's a key trigger for us in our economy of content. So on Nextdoor, everything is generated by members. Members and neighbors are the unique kind of atomic measure of value. And they're exchanging messages with each other all day, millions of times a day. And so for us, we're not your typical social network. We're not a Twitter or Instagram or Facebook where people are on Nextdoor and like pulling to refresh all day. It's not that type of an addictive application. What we are is a much more utility-driven network. And so a lot of our engagement comes from triggered notifications. And those triggered notifications go out either through email, when someone posts an interesting message or replies to a comment on a thread that you've been a part of, or in some cases, through the form of an urgent alert during a time of a natural disaster. If people need to get the word out in a way that's a high priority channel, that can go out through email, push notifications, or SMS alerts. Incidentally, we're also partners with Twilio. We've been working with Twilio for a long time as well for the SMS part of this. And so I think these notifications are a really, really key driver for our engagement loops. And in order for that to work properly, we kind of have this hypothesis, and I think Jeff talked about this earlier today, but it's really about sending the right notification to the right person on the right channel at the right frequency. And so in a world where there's tons and tons of content coming through, especially in our busiest neighborhoods, it's our responsibility at Nextdoor to make sure that we filter through the noise and find the signal, and then make sure that we can reliably notify our members when there's interesting content for them to come discover on Nextdoor. In addition to that, we send a daily digest email to most of our members every day, which summarizes the activity in their communities for the day. We send millions and millions of those every day. In fact, I think when we first started working with Sendgrid, maybe we'll get to this later, we were sending on the order of like 46 to 50,000 emails a day. We send over that in a minute today at peak volume. So every month we're sending 1.5 billion emails, I think, every month to our members. So email's a really, really big part of what we do.
Cool, and there's definitely a lot of overlap in how IFT uses Sendgrid from how Nextdoor does. So I won't go too deep into it, but you might not think it from the surface, but we're also a network. We're not a social network, really much more of a network around all the different services that any individual user might use. And you would never really think it, but there's actually millions of people that connect their Fitbit or their Strava to their savings account. If you had asked me that would be something people would be doing, I would have never guessed that. But we help identify and get those opportunities to make those types of connections out to the relevant people that either have the savings account or have the Fitbit account for them to make a decision on making that connection. The other thing we do that I think is a little bit different, and I think is fairly probably unique in the Sendgrid world, is we really open up email as something that users can define what types of email they might want to get from the 650 services on IFT. So just for example, I myself have bought probably 2 or 3 pairs of shoes, a bike, and rented an apartment, all from emails sent through IFT, either looking at eBay or Craigslist, to myself. And so since we're opening up this channel that can really be anything and putting our reputation on the line, these are emails sent from IFT, it's really important for us to think about how do we guarantee that all of those emails are legit? And if somebody signs up with an email that may or may not be their own, we weed them out really quick so they don't start getting a flood of emails that they didn't actually sign up for. So that's, I think, a very unique use case. And in both of those buckets, we also send millions of emails per day, whether those are kind of transactional or kind of opportunity marketing-based emails, or emails that users have explicitly said, yeah, if someone rings my Connect the Doorbell, I want to know about it via an email.
I think one of my favorite examples is turn the light on when the pizza delivery man arrives.
Yeah,
I'm sure that our porch light would be on quite a bit with that specific example. And so talking about like the nitty-gritty of Sendgrid, Prakash, why did you choose to use Sendgrid as your email API provider, and what did it look like to integrate with API?
So it's actually, we have a pretty interesting story here, which is when we first started the company, which was back in the summer of 2010, and we were looking for a way to deliver emails. Obviously, we didn't want to build our own email stack, and so we kind of hunted the market, and I think we stumbled upon Sendgrid at that time. And we started using the free version of it because we were sending just a trickle of emails. And then for some reason, and I'll take responsibility for this as kind of CTO at the time, we thought, well, let's just build our own email system. And so we went out and we started configuring postfix and spinning up EC2 machines and provisioning, static IPs and all kinds of stuff. And honestly, that part of it wasn't so bad, right? Like you get something up and running and all of a sudden you're sending emails. But then everything downstream was completely opaque. Did the email get delivered? Did the email show up in someone's inbox? Do we get a call back when it's opened? We had to build all this infrastructure around that, and as we started to kind of explore and better understand the space in email, we realized, hey, it's not just about getting the bytes off of your server into the ether and showing up in someone's inbox. There's a lot more to this, and especially if we want to get scientific about the way that we send emails. And so we ended up going with a different provider at the time that was operated by Rackspace eventually. And it turned out, and one of our engineers, it was funny, I'll never forget this, we were having all kinds of problems, like emails weren't getting delivered, they were having outages, we were blowing up their servers. And an engineer came back to me, the lead engineer that was working on this, and he said, Prakash, we're like the whales in the kiddie pool at this place. Like, they can't keep up with our scale. We're bringing down their service all the time. We got to go somewhere else, or we got to bring this in-house. And it just so happened that summer, or I think it was the fall, at the AWS reInvent conference, I happened to have dinner with Isaac Saldana, who's one of the founders of Sendgrid. Got to know him, and he was a deeply, deeply technical individual. Really kind of spoke the same language. I was telling him about the problems that we were having with our own service, and he was like, oh, no big deal on it. For us, you can send as much email as you want. And it was that conversation that triggered kind of an exploration into migrating over to Sendgrid, which happened in about 2014. And our goals were very, very simple for our email program. Get the emails delivered at the volume and scale that we were sending them at, make sure that they're delivered in a timely fashion, and that there's a round trip, that we actually get callbacks and can understand when emails are open, when emails are clicked through on, that we had kind of the full visibility. And what Sendgrid offered in addition to that, which I think we take full advantage of today, was a fully managed deliverability unit that understood, hey, for this particular ISP, you're having deliverability concerns? No problem. We can pick up the phone and call Comcast or Roadrunner or whoever the ISP is in all parts of the world. And so today we use Sendgrid not just here in the US, but we use it in 10 countries around the world, including Canada, Australia, and Europe. And we're able to segment and divide our email streams for things like transactional and urgent emails, things like forgotten passwords or urgent alerts, away from things like emails that we send that invite people to join the service, which may be viewed a little bit more speculatively, right? Away from content emails. And so being able to have that flexibility, the ability to customize those streams of delivery, the ability to monitor them reliably, and then to be able to observe them at scale in a way that gets emails into people's inboxes, we've had nothing but success with this relationship. And it's one of those kinds of things where, you know, as a CTO, I want folks in our company really focused on building great products for our members. I don't want them having to think about, you know, how we're going to operate a fleet of email servers at scale and SMTP and MTAs and deliverability and all of that. And so that's worked out really, really well for us. We kind of just set it and forget it. And as we go into new countries, I call Alex and I say, hey, we're about to go launch in Australia. And boom, she lines up the troops. And next thing you know, we've got some IPs to send from in Australia. So it's worked out really well for us.
Yeah, it's been really cool to see the international expansion over the last year. I think you've expanded to 7 or 8 new countries.
Just last year. Yeah.
And to your point, every country has its own unique, deliverability strategy, of which, urgent alerts, we can't afford for those to be, in the spam folder. And scale and reliability are huge.
Yeah.
So I hear that from every customer that I work with. When looking for, an email API provider, we need scale, we need reliability, and we need uptime, of which Sendgrid is 99.999, so 5 nines. Lyndon, what about you? What has your experience been like?
Well, I think I'm a little bit more unique because I'm maybe less technical than you are, but I love to hack things together. And I was a solo founder right out of the gate. And really our whole worldview right from day one was really in line with what I think Sendgrid represents, which is allow people to choose best-in-class products. It's not all from one provider or another, if all those things can work together. What we have this concept on the platform called services. So think of services as like, Strava or Fitbit or Google Calendar, so on and so forth. And the very first service we built was an email service because, Sendgrid made it that easy. And the second one was Twitter, and the third one was weather. And so I like to think that email was one of the most important services that anybody who used the internet would understand. They may not think about it and call it a service. They'd just say they have an email account. But if we were going to help people stitch things together and get things to work together, we had to have email, and there's a reason that was number one. And so we were able to make the decision, and we, meaning me at the time, we very quickly grew the team from there, but we were able to quickly make the decision that it wasn't worth building email ourselves for a lot of the same reasons Prakash mentioned, and we've never really looked back. And we did the same thing with SMS with Twilio, and so it was really this like golden age of APIs. And since then, so many businesses have really followed that same pattern to think in terms of if we can build an API around something and extract that whole function and whole capability from our customers in a way and do it better, cheaper, faster, all the adjectives, then that's going to be a successful business. And so we've been really, really happy, not just with the reliability, the deliverability, so on and so forth, but also just we don't have to worry about it. It's one less thing that our development team, like the number of times I have a conversation about email with an engineer, I maybe think is zero in the last year, unless we're talking about building a new email or something with the marketing team. And I think that peace of mind, the fact that it's not something we have to address, really can't be overstated.
Absolutely. I know if I'm working with a new customer, I often hear, Alex, you might not hear from us, and that's a good thing. It doesn't mean that we don't like you. It doesn't mean that we're not happy. It just means that it's working, and that's it, right? Yeah. So now that your email programs have matured over time, what are you most, Prakash, if you want to kick us off, what are you most proud of in terms of your email program, and are there specific results that you can share?
Yeah, I think one is we've managed to, people often talk about email as being almost a dying medium in a world where we're collaborating using Slack, and most people have mobile phones now through which you send push notifications. But for a service like Nextdoor, we tend to skew a little bit older in our demographic. And so we still have a fair number of desktop web users who use the website, not the mobile apps. We still have a fair number of users who exclusively interact with Nextdoor through our emails. Like they read the daily digests every day and they get the information they need. If they do want to engage with us or they do want to post something, then they come to the app. And so email is a really critical channel for us, even 10 years into building this company or 9 years into building this company. And so one of the things that I'm proud of is as we've managed to scale the program, and again, we're sending billions of emails a year now, and a month we're sending billions of emails. We are now able to kind of shrink that program to fit. And Sendgrid has been super supportive of this, right? Like they don't want us just spamming our members, basically indiscriminately. And so when we have conversations with them, we say, hey, look, we may start to kind of taper things off, but we'll continue to send as a primary channel. They're super supportive and work with us to help design those programs in such a way that we can, kind of achieve that mission of right email, right time, right frequency. So two things that I'm proud of in particular. Number one, remember we started with Sendgrid sending 47,000 emails a day. We're now sending double that at peak a minute. So, and without any service interruptions along the way. So that's really, really, kind of a testament to both the growth of the service, but also our partners' ability to kind of keep up with that scale. I don't know that there are a lot of services on the internet that are sending email at that scale these days. And then secondly, along the way, we've managed to kind of throttle down the volume, the overall volume of email that we send, the average number of emails we send per member, while maintaining a high degree of engagement without letting engagement slip. So it feels like internally, our calibration is getting better and better and better. And so while we're still sending, 1.5 billion emails a month, that could easily have been like 3 billion or something, if not for the work of the team that's back at HQ trying to kind of tune the machine. So I'm proud of the way that program has continued to scale. And even as there tends to be more of a secular shift away from email to other mediums like push notifications, it's still probably the number one way that people stay engaged with Nextdoor is reading those daily digest emails. We'd prefer for them to use the app, but above all, we want to make sure that they're getting the information that they want and that they're getting it in a timely fashion. And so even as that email volume is scaled, they still get them on time, and people still open them every day. So.
Great, thank
Yeah.
you. Lyndon?
Yeah, and we didn't compare notes before we chatted about this, but I have a really similar story because I think we've also, over the last year or two, probably reduced the overall volume of email we send maybe in half.
Yeah.
And have similarly maintained and grown engagement just with the product and the brand itself. And I think that in some of the conversations with Sendgrid, we never felt guilty or bad. There was never kind of a push because it's really this double-edged sword. Sendgrid probably wants us to send more email, but they realize that at some point we send so much email that we annoy our customers and our business goes out of business. Well, they're going to lose a customer. So I think that is one of the things that I felt really, really comfortable with because it's volume is Sendgrid's business, but that relationship with the customer is ours. And so I think for us, just having that confidence as we've reduced those volumes and similarly looked at, okay, does this email really work the way we want it to, or are we just bothering people? And have we made a lot of smart choices there? We've similarly, just in the last couple of weeks, our strategy has shifted almost whole hog towards apps, the mobile apps, iOS, Android, and web is still a big part of what we do as well. It's about half of how people use our product. And being able to, I think, quickly iterate on and test this idea of a targeted, extra couple buttons in the footer to download the app only to the people that haven't downloaded the app yet. Somebody came up with that idea, tested it a couple ways, and then roll it out across a lot of the different emails we send. And we just saw an immediate 10 to 12% daily increase in app downloads. So I think that's a very recent success story that allowed us to quickly try something out, have the idea, do it all in Sendgrid, look at a lot of the analytics that Sendgrid provides was something that's really meaningful for our business relative to getting a lot of those users that are already on IFT using the mobile applications.
And I think you hit the nail on the head. Obviously, it's really exciting to see companies grow with Sendgrid, but not at the expense of deliverability. And we're all, email users ourselves, and I know that I get annoyed when, the frequency isn't what I'm hoping, it to be. And so ultimately, it's finding that sweet spot with, frequency that will reach that ideal, engagement. So we're excited to see you grow, but obviously we don't want everyone to be spamming. Now, on the other hand, what are some valuable lessons that you've learned along the way? Prakash?
Yeah, I think coming back to something that I think both of us talked about, it's really understanding what is core to your business and what you want your people spending time owning and operating and differentiating from all of your competitors. And for us, we maybe learned that the hard way, which was email is a seemingly simple problem. It's like I got to get a message from point A to point B, but running an email program where email is kind of central and is a central theme to kind of your existence is a completely different animal, right? So for us, that recognition early on that, hey, wait a minute, email is central to our engagement loops. Email is going to be something that we're going to be doing at scale in a pretty significant way, and that we need to be scientific about because we want to optimize these campaigns. We want to optimize the delivery and routing of emails. That was the kind of aha moment that led us to saying, look, this is something where, yeah, we need to be good at the assessment of who to send to and at what frequency, and like a lot of those smarts are going to live inside of the machine, and so we need to own that. But deliverability is really, really important. And when you start sending email at scale, all kinds of weird stuff happens, right? Because you're sending email to thousands of different ISPs all over the place, little mom and pop shops and places that are using off-the-shelf spam filters and all kinds of wacky things. And you encounter that in the wild, and for the most part, you're sort of helpless as a customer because you don't know who to call on the other side there, and they may not even pick up your call. And so one of the biggest things that we learned through kind of integrating with Sendgrid is the importance of that function of monitoring your deliverability on an ISP by ISP basis, being able to spot outliers and trends where you do have a deliverability gap. And occasionally it'll happen, right? You get swallowed up by a spam filter that's mistuned, or you have a higher than normal degree of people reporting your emails as spam. that feedback is the lifeblood of your email program. Those are the things that are ultimately your Achilles heel or your blind spot as a company. And to be able to cover that blind spot up and to know that while you're sleeping at night, someone's kind of monitoring that and can pick up the phone and get through, I think that is one of the biggest lessons that we learned. And had we not figured that out, chances are we would have been flying blind, because we'd be responding to declines in engagement or declines in visitation or declines in open rates, and we probably wouldn't even know if those emails hit people's inboxes. And we wouldn't even know which ISPs were having problems without like going to second and third order effects. So I think that's really, really important. If any of you are running email programs where email is really central to your existence, just remember there's a lot more to it than just message getting from point A to point B, which is hugely important. You need a reliable provider and you need to build reliable infrastructure, but there's so much more than that. So that to me is the biggest learning.
Yeah, and I'll take it in a little bit of a different direction. And if you haven't heard already, Sendgrid's great. You should use them. So like I'll make it a little bit less of a sales pitch on you, because I think one of the things I've learned is just how distant from the core experience of your product most, whether it's a product manager, an engineer, a designer, a marketer, a CEO, email is still very much, I wouldn't say it's an afterthought because it's really important, but when you think about the experience that your customer has with your brand, which is your product, your logo, every email you send, really every touch point, every customer support request experience they have, if you don't think about email as one of those surface areas, and you heard from Prakash, email is one of the primary ways that people come back and engage with their product, and that's the case for our product as well. If you don't think of that as really an extension of that brand, it's really, really easy to get into this mode where you're optimizing, maybe for all the right metrics, click through, open, all these kind of things, but the types of people that are thinking really critically about how someone signs up or signs in or does the core kind of activity that whatever your business or service provides in an app or a website, if that same person also isn't thinking critically about how an email either brings them back to that or makes that experience better or more useful, then I think you're really, really dropping the ball. And it's unfortunate because so many organizations, and it's one of the things that I don't really have a good answer for you right now that we're trying to solve with our organization, is email is really split between a marketing org and a product and engineering org. And there's transactional emails or reset your password. Well, the marketing team doesn't send that or think about that. That's the product team and the engineering team. And then there's a whole set of things the marketing team is thinking about, the newsletter, the things that try to get people to do multiple new things on top of the first thing they did. And if there's not really tight coordination between those two, or even if you have good coordination, the fact that it's a split brain, that creates a problem. And so I think it's one of those things that I'd love to see, whether that's Sendgrid or just someone out in the community, think about differently to bring that either back into the product or just acknowledge that that's one of the primary ways that people think about your brand, and it's not just another email. So yeah, it's something we're currently grappling with right now, and I'm not sure if that's something other people have seen as well.
I think I've gotten that direct feedback from some marketers at Nextdoor.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
I've definitely heard that before as well. Now, we've hit on it a little bit, but what does the future of email look like? And you've both mentioned you're a joint, Twilio Sendgrid customer. So how do you plan to, utilize other channels in the future?
Yeah, I can speak to that because we signed up to Twilio and Sendgrid way back in 2009 even, is when we did it. And I think for us, we look at it as they're very, very similar products. One's SMS, one's email. It's just as much about reliability and uptime as it is the actual sending. And so to think about those two things together for us and for those relationships to start combining, it makes a lot of sense. So just like our core philosophy has always been, and it's a little more aimed at the consumer about giving people the option to pick from the best products. We don't all want to live in a Google world or an Apple world or an Amazon world. That sounds fairly dystopian to me. But that doesn't mean that some of those best products shouldn't work better together under the same roof. And it seems like that's where things are headed with Twilio and Sendgrid.
Yeah, look, but just exactly the same thinking here. For us, again, we want to send the right notification to the right person at the right time through the right channel. And that means choosing between this menu of options of people who have given us their phone numbers and want SMSs for urgent alerts that are happening during hurricanes and floods and fires, or sending a push notification to their mobile devices because they prefer the immediacy and the ability to just kind of click right through and get to the information they need. And yet others are just going to want to get the daily digest, and they're going to want to scan through it and look at the day's activity. And so however people want to consume the content for us, we want to be able to get the emails and push notifications out in front of them, get the content out in front of them through whatever medium is most convenient to them. And ultimately, that probably means supporting a multi-channel strategy. We support that today, but given that those products are now becoming more in alignment, and I remember even talking to the folks at Sendgrid a while ago and being part of a research effort around potentially doing multi-channel delivery just through the Sendgrid APIs. So, hey, what if Sendgrid supported push notifications? Well, that's great, right? Because if we don't have to think about that, even better. And today we do, right? Today we do send directly through, Firebase or Google or whatever we're sending through. So anything that we can do to just sort of take that machinery and collapse it into one little abstract box that says, notify the user how the user wants to be notified for this particular piece of content, that's kind of the nirvana for us.
Absolutely, and I know that's been a very common theme throughout the day today. So we just have a minute or two left. I wanted to open it up to any questions. Yeah.
You mentioned a minute ago about the not wanting to build stuff, right? Obviously, the big use it as a service. But you did, I think you were getting to the point where you were talking a little bit about something you do build before the mail gets to the service. The frequency, I think you said. I'm wondering how much innovation you have to do there. It's always a question for me on, just using it like we're just throwing it up the API kind of doubly and let it deliver versus using like templates that Sendgrid's providing. How much do you live on that left side, if you will, and do innovation before to construct the email, if that makes sense?
Just to repeat that question, it was what is the innovation that is done before they're actually, sending an email message through Sendgrid?
Yeah, so for us, there's a lot of knowledge that we have internally in our systems about user activity, user engagement, the kinds of things that they've seen in the past, the kinds of ways that they've interacted on the apps or on the website. And we use that to factor in when a new piece of content is posted into a neighborhood, how likely it is that that user will be interested in consuming that piece of content. We also keep a record internally of how many emails we've delivered to them throughout the day, with kind of a local maximum or a cap so that we don't annoy them or frustrate them throughout the day. And then we also build up a collection of sort of breadcrumbs around what will ultimately appear in someone's daily digest for those people who are subscribed. So there's a lot of that smarts that's kind of internal to us. Then as we send through Sendgrid, it turns out that there are little clusters of members that are all kind of the same. And they're going to get the same email. It's going to look the same. The layout is going to be exactly the same, but it's kind of a mail merging operation where you're just going to put in people's names, their neighborhoods, whatever's in there. And so those are efficiencies that over time, rather than doing a single API call for every member that we're going to send, which would be billions of API calls a month, we can kind of compress that down to something that's efficient over the wire, which is the template kind of strategy. So you've got a template, you've got a set of substitution variables. The API supports that really elegantly, and so we do use that. And more recently, and I don't even know if I'm allowed to talk about this, but I'll go ahead and talk about it anyway, because I view it as a partnership. But in our world, at sending at that kind of volume, you actually end up having like bandwidth concerns, right? You're paying for outbound bandwidth, and we started to work with Sendgrid as they migrate more into AWS and trying to find ways to kind of make that more efficient. Compression over the wire and making sure that we had endpoints that were in the same AWS region as our services. And so there's a lot that we kind of optimized and worked together on, but most of the kind of smarts about, hey, are we sending the right email to the right person, still resides in our own purview. The efficiencies of how we kind of deliver that at scale, we push that off to Sendgrid. Does that answer the question?
It does, yeah.
Okay, great.
And you are allowed to talk about that. We do offer HTML compression, which is something that we had done very early on with you all, but is now available for everyone.
Okay, sorry, I
and
felt like I
it's
was
something, too,
speaking
that
out of school.
A lot of people don't know that we offer, so thanks for bringing that up. Is there anything else that you wanted to add to that, Lyndon? Or
Oh, no, I
similar?
thought that was a great answer, yeah.
Okay, great. We have time for one more question. Yeah.
Activity-based email templates, how do you define success metrics when they're different for each user and track them?
So the question was for activity-based, sorry, can you say that a little bit louder?
How do you define success for each one?
Defining success for each email based off of an activity-based email, is that correct?
Yeah, and then what do you use for the analytics to track success of each one?
And then the analytics that are used to track success.
Yeah, well, I'll take activity-based emails, meaning kind of transactional emails, things that are a little more tied to the product than kind of a marketing newsletter. Is that correct? Yeah. Yeah, so the way we look at it is really kind of is there something that's an informational email, things that somebody needs to know, but you don't have to take action? Or is it something that we want someone to take action on? So password reset, it's got to be all about somebody opening that email, clicking the email, and resetting their password. Because hopefully somebody wanted to reset the password, and if they click that email, they're much more likely to actually complete that reset of the password. If it's something more informational, hey, there's a problem, and you can't really take action on it, but we've got to let you know, we look at open rate. So hopefully that's not too obvious, but we've demarcated two very different types of communications. Some of those are about someone taking action, and some of those are about letting someone know something that we feel like it's really important that they know.
It's very, very similar for us. We do a lot of experimentation on everything from subject lines to the content of emails. We do a lot of A/B testing and try different formats and different subjects, ultimately with the goal of first making sure that members find the email compelling enough to open. And then obviously, depending on what's in that email, we expect them either to click through or just consume the content right there. And so a lot of the success is determined by kind of what the campaign is. And we look at that in terms of what we use for analytics. We actually use a lot of callbacks from Sendgrid to understand when those emails have been opened. So we have kind of a shallow copy of all of the data that Sendgrid has as well. So we can either go to the Sendgrid console and kind of look at that raw data in terms of open rates and click-throughs, or we can go back into our own data warehouse and combine that with a number of other signals that we keep about our members so that we can kind of really fine-tune, hey, you know what, we can maybe get the frequency down, or maybe we can get the precision of the emails down, or maybe we can use a different signal that's not working, or a particular variant of the email that we're sending. And so we are very, very scientific about this. And having done this for 10 years, we have a full team that kind of thinks about the efficacy of our notifications. We even use machine learning in those cases as well to create lookalike models between cohorts of users that behave similarly. And so there's a lot of science and data science behind that now.
Yeah, and I think the one thing I'll add really quick is to as you have a more and more data-driven approach, it's really easy to get lost in, does someone want this damn email? And is this something that is very easy for them to take action on? And you start to put too much data behind it, and you start to do things like, well, maybe let's put a bunch of buttons right up front. So someone is going to click one of those buttons, and if that button isn't the main call to action, the reset your password. If the reset your password button isn't above the fold and the biggest damn button, and there's some other button that someone accidentally clicks on, that looks like good data to somebody. More engagement, more people clicking the button, but ultimately it's a terrible experience. And sometimes you've got to step back and distance yourself from that data and go back to principles. Is this something that someone really wants? And is this going to be easy for them to take action on? So I think always having that written down somewhere and the data has got to be the best approach.
Prakash and Lyndon, thank you for your time this evening. Thank you for sharing your experience and your expertise with us. Thank you for everyone who's attended. I know it's been a really long day, and we are 5 minutes into the welcome reception. So thanks again, and have a great evening.
Thank you.